Apex seems like a well-run tournament. The fighting game side of it went well. There were lots of great games, which is always the most important thing. Other than that, I mean, it's my first time going to a Smash major, and it's been great. I'm like very pleasantly surprised to see that the scene gets crazy and loud. I had no idea what it was going to be like, and they're over there causing a whole ton of noise. So that's cool. I mean, it seems like a great major, honestly. Yeah, AE 2012 had a pretty crazy tournament. There were lots of upsets, and furthermore, it wasn't just the upsets. It was the fact that players who are good and have been good but never really broke through to the top level made part of the top 3. So K-Brad has won before, but Demon Hio hasn't in Street Fighter 4, and neither has Lionheart. They've both been good but have never really gotten that high. And then people like Sanford Kelly weren't in top 8, Dominion wasn't in top 8, Wolfcron wasn't in top 8. So I mean, there was a lot of craziness. Part of that, in some of the cases, is people not playing that much. Part of it, I know, is, for example, Wolfcron is learning stick. He didn't play on pad. Maybe there's something there. But the other part of it is just that the game, in my opinion, is fairly well balanced. There are some stupid matchups, but I think it's fairly well balanced. Which means that if players get good enough, that it's going to be like that. It's going to be this kind of thing where you don't know who's going to win. It's been like that, honestly, for a while, where the people who you think are going to win don't necessarily win. It's only a couple of guys that you can really count on at this point in the whole world. Other than that, it's kind of crazy. And it's been like that. So that's how I think it will be. I think it'll continue to get like that even more as players get better. And yeah, I would expect to see that. I mean, you know, this was a big AE tournament. I don't know that it was like a major for it. So there were people here who have played against each other a lot and know each other's styles, and anything can happen in that kind of situation. Lots of players from New York and Philadelphia especially, and you could see that they knew each other really well in how they played. And that means, like, in that kind of situation, even if one person usually wins in casuals when it comes to tournament, you never really know, because they both know how each other works so well that a slight change in tournament can really alter how things go. I definitely fall on the side that AE 2012 is a matchup game, not a tiers game. There's some games, so think of like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. The higher tier a character is in each individual matchup, the higher tier character is almost always more likely to win. There are some exceptions to that, but it's usually the case. It's not at all the case in Street Fighter 4. So you bring up Native Impact beating with T-Hawk beating Wolfcron with Viper. That sounds like it's weird on the face of it, but actually T-Hawk doesn't have a bad matchup against Viper. That is fine. That's a fine matchup for him. He can totally win it. In fact, maybe he has the advantage even. So that's not weird. It's just weird if you think about it being a tiers game. Yeah, T-Hawk is towards the bottom. Viper is more towards the top. And there's no denying that there are tiers in the game, and those are very important. But in an individual matchup like that, you don't necessarily have it that the top tier beats the low tier. So you bring up also that there were Sagats. I think there were three Sagats in top 8 or top 16, something like that. That's crazy. I don't think Sagat is top 10. I feel like he struggles to get in the top half of the cast, frankly. And yet he is doing well, right? So yeah, Cammy and Seth ultimately ended up at the top. But there have been plenty of tournaments where that hasn't been the case. Cammy has won before. Only a few times has Cammy won big tournaments. Only a few times with Seth. You know, those characters have way more good matchups than they have bad ones. I feel like Cammy probably doesn't lose more than a couple of matchups in the whole game. But that doesn't mean that she dominates everybody. She definitely has dominant matchups, but she doesn't dominate everybody. So she can run into matchups that are bad for her and can take her out. Same with Seth. He can totally run into bad matchups. And in fact, I think he did in the end. I think the Cammy beats him. So that kind of stuff definitely has a big impact on it. I mean, there was a Sim/Rose up there. There's a lot. That's how the game is. It's been a pretty regular occurrence that Street Fighter 4 nowadays has a top 8 that is either totally 8 different characters, or that has characters you wouldn't expect, like Sagat or whatever it is, Rose, Dalsum, etc. That's become a pretty regular occurrence, and I think that it will continue to be a regular occurrence. The barrier for Hakan is just somebody's willingness to take the time. I mean, that's really it. You have to have good execution to play that character. He's very execution heavy. I feel like that's part of why. But in addition to that, it's just people expect that he's not good. I'm not really sure why that is. I feel like if you take a look at what the character can do, 15 minutes later, you'll have a good appreciation for it. If you think about his matchups, I think that he beats some very important characters like Akuma. But you know, it's just people's willingness to take the time. The execution takes a long time to learn. There's a lot of matchup stuff to learn. And he's an ugly character. He's a joke character. So I mean, he's got these things going against him. If he was some cute girl named Jessica or something like that with the exact same character, everything, he would have been explored already, and people would think differently about it. But you know, I mean, it'll happen. It'll definitely happen at some point. Just the question is how long it will it take? I don't know. Probably a long time. The Marvel tournament was awesome. I thought it was probably more interesting than the Street Fighter tournament. I think that it was awesome because it ended up being Chris G versus Filipino Champ, which is what everybody wanted to see. And Filipino Champ wanted to do well, but he didn't. It was more lopsided than it ended up actually looking. It was 3-2 in that set, but those two comebacks, Champ's first two characters were almost irrelevant, even though their matchup, or the Dorn matchup, is okay for him against Chris G's team. Even still, he was frozen. And Phoenix made a couple comebacks for him. Other than that, he looked like he wasn't up to Chris's level. I know part of it is that Filipino Champ doesn't get the practice against Morgan Doom, because nobody plays Morgan Doom in Northern California, and almost nobody in California plays that team just in general. Here you have two, right? He had to beat Jay Rosa to get to the grand finals. So yeah, 2/3 of the top three is that shell. Something he doesn't see unless he travels to the East Coast, or unless Chris G travels here, or Jay Rosa now travels to SoCal, that is. So he has that going against him. But at the same time, I mean, just the things that Chris was doing, the setups he had, the patterns with fireballs that he had, the combos into Soul Drain that he had, those are all things that, even if you practice against, they're still really, really good. So that was definitely the highlight. That's probably the highlight of the whole tournament for me. Well, definitely there are some teams and some shells out here that are more popular, that are really good, that just for some reason people aren't playing in California. I don't know that I would say overall that the East Coast is better. I feel like Chris G is the best in the country, but that's not necessarily reflective of the whole coast. I feel like other than that, the coasts are probably pretty evenish. But he is clearly a step above right now. And you know, I want with the West Coast to start using some of the stuff like Moradoom, if for no other reason than to practice against for when you see it with Jay Rosa and Chris G. But that hasn't happened. I mean, at the same time, like, I feel like West Coast, especially Northern California, was really good at adopting things like Virgil, you know, earlier on, and I mean, you know, Marlon's been playing Viper, but there have been a few Vipers in NorCal for quite a while, and Strider too, and that kind of stuff. I feel like is all equally on both sides, if not even more so on West Coast. But it's really the Moradoom thing that we don't have, and I mean, it's also interesting because I feel like SoCal is a little bit more varied, a little bit less insistent on top tiers. Maybe that's a problem, but I guess it hasn't been enough of a problem in major tournaments yet. Maybe it will be, but for now, other than Chris G, I think that the coasts are kind of evenish. So they satisfied as many people as they possibly could. The fighting game community has never been as satisfied as it should be with what EVO did. It caters to everybody. I mean, Street Fighter players, Marvel players, anime players, 3D game players, whatever. I mean, if you like, you know, Mortal Kombat style, if you like a game, a kind of game archetype, and it's there. And if it's not there right now, for example, like Melee or something like that, you can vote for it in the player choice thing. So it's like they went out of their way to please everybody. And I don't know how they're going to do that, how they're going to have 8 games when last year 6 games strained their resources. I don't know what they're going to do differently. But I think it's awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I think probably part of the reason why they felt like they could go with 8 games is that they're not expecting to have like eight 1,000 person tournaments. You know what I mean? Like Marvel 3, Street Fighter 4, those will be 1,500 or more, like they have been the last couple of years. Maybe a couple other games approach 1,000, but it's not going to be the case that like the player choice game gets 600 people, or you know, I mean, some of the games, Cross Tekken's probably going to get in the low hundreds, something like that. Maybe Mortal Kombat, same thing, and that's fine. I'm not saying that that's bad. That's good, but I think that that's part of why Evo thought that they could fit in as many things as they are. So I don't know. We'll see how they do it. I'm not sure, but I'm happy about it.
Personal preference for what that last match?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, of course, I want Super Turbo to be that last game. It's my favorite game. I mean, what can I say? That's definitely my choice. If not that, I want either CVS 2 or Dive Kick. Because I'd love to see CVS 2 again, especially if they were to bring people, especially if people were really to practice for it again, and especially if they were to bring people from you know, East Asia, like from Japan, to come play it. That'd be amazing. Game is so good. But at the same time, Dive Kick would be rad because it's if it's done. I mean, I don't even know if it's gonna be done. If it is, then it's just a unique kind of game that I think has a really interesting style of play and really interesting strategy to it. And I think it'd be a really cool Evo edition. All that said, I definitely think that My Little Pony is going to win it. Seriously, because I just think that scene is going to like donate like crazy. So we'll see.